Hi, coworkers. So yeah, I'm Tiffany Jernigan. I'm going to be talking about distributed tracing and a little bit of AI using Spring and Java. Some of the stuff that I was trying to get working earlier do not work, so we'll see how the demo gods play. All right, so first I'm going to talk a bit about the application that I have here. So there's a few different components that are there. So you can see on the left, there is a launcher. And at the moment, I was just using Bash and didn't manage to have the Python part working properly for whatever reason. So that part is not instrumented. So if we look on the right side, we have this thing called the image database. So basically, this image database, it's using Spring and Java. It basically goes and talks to a Postgres database. You have REST endpoints, so you can go and see, hey, what is inside of this database? You can go and push and post to it. It's doing that using Spring Data. It also has Spring Web for the REST API endpoints. And then basically, afterwards, you'll be able to see all the images and prompts that we'll be putting in using Timeleaf. The apps in the middle are jobs that are being created by the launcher. So basically, you are giving some sort of prompt, as you normally do when you are trying to generate something with a prompt. It then uses Spring AI to go and make a request to OpenAI, and that goes and generates a DALL-E image. So whatever you decide that you want to end up putting. And then afterwards, it goes and takes that prompt and puts that into the database. So all this stuff is just running on Kubernetes. You can do it on any Kubernetes cluster. I'll share the URL later, and there's also a setup if you don't want to go and manually create a cluster. If you want to use Terraform, there is something for running a cluster with DigitalOcean. OK. So who here has used Spring or with Java before? OK, a couple people. OK. So if you haven't, pretty much the easiest way to create a Spring Boot application is to go to start.spring.io. You can include the dependencies that you need. So for instance, when I'm using Spring Web, you have Spring Web there, you have Spring AI. You can go through and pick the different dependencies that you end up needing. And then you end up having, if you have it, whether it's like Maven, you can have your pom.xml. If you have your Gradle, basically you can choose all that, and you have at least a starting point. OK, so that's the general gist of just the application. It's pretty basic. There's not very many components to it, but we can see that there are different pieces that are talking to each other. OK, so observability, which is what everyone is probably here for, I would think. So I'm going to just, I guess, who is actually new to observability, if anyone? OK. So everyone is very familiar. So you all probably already know about the 3 or 4, depending on who you're talking to, pillars of observability. Who here has heard of people talking about profiling being the 4th one? OK, so a few people. So that's newer. And you can see things like, you can see flame graphs. I'm not going into that kind of stuff now, but it's something that's pretty cool to look into. Obviously, we have the other ones of metrics, logs, and traces. So in this talk, I'm not going to be going into all of these. But when you have all of these there, you need some way to be able to go and, say, collect your metric data, get your logs, your traces. And there's a bunch of different tools out there. For a while, basically, you would pick, hey, I want to use this tool. You needed to know how to figure out setting everything up. And then if you decided you want to change, then you have to go and figure everything else out there. So that could be somewhat complicated. So who here has actually used OpenTelemetry before? OK. So maybe half of the room. OK, so I don't know exactly what all has been fully covered up till now, but just to make sure everyone is on the same page. So basically, this is where OpenTelemetry ends up coming in. So it's a collection of APIs, SDKs, and tools. There are a bunch of different languages, so you can do things with like Java, you can do Python, et cetera. And so you can basically use it to go and instrument, generate, collect, and export your telemetry data, so the aforementioned metrics, logs, and traces. And you use those to help you analyze your software's performance and the behavior of it. Okay, so there's a few different ways to go and collect your traces, logs, etc., the data that you have. So some of the ones that you may be familiar with are using the OpenTelemetry collector. So that's basically just a vendor-agnostic way to receive, process, and export telemetry data. We also have Grafana Alloy, so that's also a vendor-neutral distribution of the OpenTelemetry collector. So it's compatible with most open source observability standards, such as OpenTelemetry and Prometheus. So there's some things that you can do there that you can't do just with the collector itself, and then they're both open source. So who here has dealt with tracing before? Okay, so I guess in general, so who's used metrics? Okay, more, and then who's used logs? All right, so it just slowly goes down as we go across. Okay, so in this talk, I'm basically going to go and I'm going to focus on tracing. So distributed tracing basically is a way to go and track a single request and log that request as it passes through all the services in your infrastructure. So this was just an example from a different talk that I had done that was in Python, and you could basically see that you have your trace at the top. You can see the different spans that are within it, and I'll go into that more during the demo, so that will make things a little bit more clear. Okay. And then who here has used Grafana before? Who has never heard of Grafana before? Okay. So open source, which is great. So Grafana Tempo basically is an open source distributed tracing backend. So some of you maybe have used things like Jaeger before. If not, there's some similarities, there's some differences. And then so that's just the back end. So you need a way to be able to go and actually visualize things afterwards. So that's where Grafana ends up coming in. So that's the visualization front end that you end up having. Okay, so now I am going to go into demo things and show different things there. Okay, so the scaling is a little bit odd. So can everyone kind of see that? Okay. All right, so basically, now that you can actually see the repo, we have this repo that I have just called Let's Generate Art. There's a few different branches that I have here. So there was one for auto instrumentation. So who here has heard of auto instrumentation before? Okay. So for the folks that don't, basically it's a way to be able to get telemetry data and such without having to go and manually change your code. So you end up you can have, say, like a Java agent or a Python one, and maybe say if you're using a Docker file, then you'll have to go and make a modification there in order to be able to include it, but you don't have to go and modify your specific code for that. There's another branch that I have that is for OpenTelemetry and micrometer. That one has a little bit of manual instrumentation there. Okay, so basically if we go into here, there's the instructions in general for being able to run the different things that are there. I need to do a little bit more work for making it so the observability part is something that you all could go through afterwards. So if we go and take a look into my applications, so I have the 3 different parts of my application. So I have the launcher, which right now is just bash. From what I was looking at, there wasn't a super easy way to actually instrument my bash code. So I need to switch that to Python or just Java or something else. So we have the image database. So for one of the really cool things about being able to use Spring, for instance, instead of having to go and I need to have my jar, and then where I need to go and build that, then I have to go and use the Java agent. You can, in your pom.xml, you can include a dependency that will actually go and use Cloud Native build packs to include your Java agent. So who here has used Cloud Native build packs in the past? One person. OK. So I guess better question, who knows about Cloud Native build packs? OK. All right, so basically, you're probably familiar with using Docker files. And so you have every single line of everything that you need to go and do. And then you go and build your Docker image. But you have to actually set out each thing that you're specifically doing with that. With build packs, instead of going and having to manually do that, you can just use build packs to build your your container image from the code that you have. It'll detect what language you're specifically using and use the specific build packs that are needed. So if we go and look into my pom.xml, there's this one. Can people actually see this well enough? Yeah, OK. OK, so there's this one section here. So when you're building something, you just can use Spring Boot build image. And so we can end up using this build pack here that is specifically for OpenTelemetry and enabling that. So you don't have to go and do something super specific. All you have to do is add that in there. And as a result, it will use the OpenTelemetry Java agent. It'll include that using build packs when it's building your image. So with doing that, you don't have to actually go and change anything with the code that you have. There are some other dependencies that you could also use. You could go and there's this OpenTelemetry instrumentation, which is the Spring Boot starter. And then you also have a BOM that is associated with that. Both of these will give you auto instrumentation, but using just the build pack, it only gives you the auto instrumentation. It doesn't allow you to have manual instrumentation where you're modifying something in your code. And then, so basically, I just went and added that to each of my Spring applications. And then you can just go and build it. So if we were to go and look at when I'm doing things with manual instrumentation using a different library. So Thomas Vitale created a library that basically includes the agent for OpenTelemetry and also goes and uses micrometer, which will get you more specific details with things in Spring. And then you can also go and manually instrument your code. If we take a look here, let's see, make sure I actually pushed it properly. OK, so we can see in here that we have Arconia. We can see the OpenTelemetry Spring Boot starter. We have the thing for micrometer, and then you can and then we also have the BOM that we have there. If I go and take a look into my code, so right now, if we just look into here for my database application. So there's a few different components here. So we have our main controller, which is where the majority of the code actually is. In here, we can see things like we have post mapping. We have git mapping. So basically, I'm putting everything to the /images, and then being able to go and look at that, like go to a page and be able to see what that actually looks like. So if I were to also then look at the image gen store one, so if we look at the code here, I'm going to go and click on this. OK, so here we can see that I'm actually having some imports from OpenAI. I mean, not OpenAI, so OpenTelemetry API. And we have it for a span and a tracer. So if we look here, we can go and you can build a span. And I can, whoops, I accidentally clicked on that. And then basically, you can end up creating a specific span that you want that isn't already there. I'm going to go and show you what this looks like using the current one, and then I'll try running it with just having auto instrumentation and hope that it doesn't break since things have not been working out for me today. Okay, so if we go and look over here, okay. So of course I have a crash loop back off, but okay. So if we look over here, basically we can see that we have our image database that is running. If we take a look at this service, we can go to this IP that we have here. If I go over to that, it's going to have a bunch of junk in it right now because I ran it earlier, and when I tried running things again, they broke. So let's see what happens. And my internet is slow. Okay, we're going to try it this way. Okay. So there's a bunch of JSON in here from things that I had previously gone and added. They are just super random of me testing things. I didn't dare clear things out because things were just, being a little crazy earlier. So right now we can see that we have just a bunch of different things in here. OpenAI only stores images for about an hour. So like if we went to go and look right now, you can't see anything that's there. So if we go back here though, so we can see there's a few other things. So there is this pod that's LGTM. So that is for Grafana. It's Loki, Grafana, Tempo, and Mimir. So Loki is for logs, Grafana is the front end, Tempo for tracing, and Mimir for metrics. So you can just go and run that. Then we also have just a Postgres so that we can get things for the database. If I go and get rid of that, and since I'm just going to port forward since I don't trust my internet right now. Okay, binary in use. Okay, so I guess another tab, I already have it port forwarded. No, okay. Let's see what I see when I go there. Okay, so I clicked over here and I went to explore. If we go over here into Tempo, we can see that it's loading very slowly. Actually, let me make sure that this is the right one since that's not the port forwarded one. Okay. So if I go to Explore, so you can use trace create all, which basically you can go and create different queries. There's a bunch of different things that you can go and use for that. There's currently a Tempo MCP server that's being created, so you can be like, hey, please create a query for this, or please search for this. If you go to Grafana Tempo's GitHub, you can see that it's a PR that's a work in progress. So that's pretty neat. If we go over to search, I guess maybe it's making sure that it's actually the right one if it's port forwarding from somewhere else. One moment. Yeah, today is not my day. Let's get rid of everything here. Okay. All right, so let's go, like, say, in the last 5 minutes and figure out Okay, so then if we go over here and we go to our, like, save, we're just searching on, okay, everything I need to, internet. Okay. And today is not my day here either. All right. Let's see. We're going to look at the past 7 days and see things, and then I'm going to try seeing if things will run, because for whatever reason, it just stopped working this morning. Okay, so if we go and look at some of the traces that we have here, that, for instance, this is just like a get. If we go and click on the specific trace, we can go in here and basically you can see a bunch of information for it. You can see what the service name is. There, you can see, like, for the library, that should say Spring Framework. And then if we look into things like span attributes, so I guess this one was one, there was an error at some point. So you can see some of the different things that are there by default. You can look into resource attributes, and the auto instrumentation gives you information like what is the language, the name, version for telemetry, and then you can define your own service name, which is what is showing up over here. I am going to see if I can actually get things running and hope that it works, and if not, then I'm not exactly sure. So if we go back over here, okay. Okay, so there were a few different things that I had to go and create. So if you're using a script or code in order to create resources, you need to give it RBAC permissions. So for me, I had to go and create a role. So I have a role for being able to create jobs, and I have a role for being able to get services. And then if we go and just try running it, make sure. Let's switch tabs. Okay. Okay, so we can see that it's going and creating it, and we'll see how it works. Okay, so then we see the launcher finished, and then it's now going and running a pod that we have there. Okay, can't do a watch on that. Okay, so let's go and just take a look at the logs. Okay, so in here we can see that it took in the environment as what the database path is for being able to post to, and then we have this image that we have. So if we go over to this point here, we can see a bunch of junk in a way. You can't tell what it means, but you can now see that it ended up adding the prompt and the image. If we go here, now let's hope that my stuff's working. And it's not. All right. So yeah, today is just definitely not my day. And for whatever reason, I also noticed earlier that I wasn't able to see anything in the last 5 days or 7 days of the other service that I was seeing previously, so that also disappeared. Yeah, so I guess basically, yay demos. And I will post something that actually is working for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on here for today. It literally put up the image. You can see the image, and for some reason, it just decided that it was going to stop giving me my traces. So yeah, thanks for coming. And if you have any questions, you can, let's put this back up. Can I see that? Okay, so slideshow. Yeah, so if you have any questions on stuff, which I'm sure you do, you can contact me on Twitter or my website there. And thanks to some of my friends that explained some stuff with how things worked with Spring, or Thomas, who created a bunch of the different tools that help make it easier with Spring and OpenTelemetry.